brings and good questions and comments that he have. And of course, always tune in to him on TikTok at Bro Salim TV. Every day he has something great that he does while he's out there on that trail. So by all means, please check him out. But today's guest is a good friend, good brother, good friend, financial mind. We got a lot of good things that he's going to talk about with common sense investing, right? And we're going to talk about how, as Black men, Black Muslim men, we can kind of be doing something a little different with what we got on. So, Brother Hud Williams, how are you, Hakeem? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm doing awesome today.
Oh man, it's good, man. You're traveling the world, man. You're making everybody money. You know what I mean? It's just it's a beautiful thing being you.
Alhamdulillah, I'm enjoying it.
Alhamdulillah. And so we're going to kind of get into it because, I don't want to take a lot of his time, but I want to get some of his time. So I'm going to jump into this conversation with us today. But y'all know how we work at the Get Made podcast. We got those 3 questions that we asked all new guests that come on. And that first question, you ready for these questions, Hood?
I'm ready for the questions.
You ready for them? All right.
I'm ready for them.
It ain't going to hurt much. You know what I mean? So, so the first question, what Black author has inspired you? A book that you read by a Black author? And if not, then maybe an author period, right? But definitely.
So definitely, I think 2 of them. The Black author that inspired me is Ta-Nehisi Coates. Of course, everyone knows Between the World and Me, a book that he wrote almost a decade ago. Mm-hmm. And the other book that just came out recently, The Message, where he talks about, amongst other things, the Palestinian issue that really gets to the heart of the issue.
Right.
However, recently I just finished The Water Dancer, which is a kind of historical fiction account about the Underground Railroad. And it was truly, we often don't kind of think about really the generational effects from slavery. Slavery, we know bondage was terrible. We know there was a lot of persecution. There was a lot of sexual assault. But one of the things that I think often gets missed is family separation. That for slaves, it was a constant threat that your family, your husband or your wife or your kids will be taken away and sold down south, or sold from Maryland, Virginia, from North Carolina down to New Orleans and Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And how much that just really wreaked havoc on family dynamics or family structure. You can imagine if, one day you have 24-hour notice that your wife is being sold, or that your husband is being sold, or that your kids are being sold. And so, really bringing that reality to me really showed me the historical trauma in Black families from family separation. Because if you couldn't make sure that your wife was going to be there, then there was an idea, well, I don't want to get married because I don't want to deal with the kind of trauma that's related to, my wife just being up and sold, or my kids being up and sold, so on and so forth. So The Water Dancer was, even my 10-year-old son, we were listening to the audiobook, and he would ask me when we get in the car, Daddy, can we put it back on? So Ta-Nehisi Coates is really a genius for our generation in terms of literary work.
No, well, that's great, man. I know I have several of his books as well, man. I might have to tap into that one. So myself. So thanks for that suggestion. Next question. It's going to be, what Black male has that that's been inspirational for you?
So definitely the first 2 I was thinking about was, of course, my father, Carl Williams, or Carl Luke Williams, and then even you, Imam Hassan. But, those would be easy answers. So I want to go kind of outside this personal circle and talk about Imam Muhammad Majid. Imam Muhammad Majid is the Imam and the kind of leader of the All Dulles Area Muslim Society. He also has been the chairman of ISNA. And, one of the things that, we often have this like archetype of like masculinity that it has to be very kind of gruff, and it has to be very kind of like, not stoic is good, but too stoic.
Right.
But Imam Majid has really, over the last kind of 25 years, outside of like my father, has been so important for me to understand who the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. When you think about how do you love another man, right, in a way that's completely like just nurturing, but as a man. And so somebody who, like, when you see him, when you hear of him, it just reminds you of kindness, of generosity, of really, just really the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you read the seerah and you understand how people enjoyed being around the messenger, how people, loved if he, they would like want to hug him or touch him, so on and so forth. And just understand that like that comes from someone, someone giving you that type of kindness and education. I remember my children who, since we moved away from Virginia, never got a chance to know Imam Majid growing up. And I remember one of them gave him salams at a conference. And he said, "Daddy, he hugged me like he knew me all my life."
Wow.
And that type of, kind of, feeling that's kind of transmuted just through touch. And so he's just been someone who's been a guide in terms of helping me understand who the Prophet was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
No. I know when I only met Imam Majid once, right? This was maybe about 10 years ago, shook his hand and everything. We was up at the Adams Center, right?
Okay.
We was doing a workshop at the Adams Center. Well, we was actually speaking at the Adams Center. And, he had us in the office. We was back in the office. I guess it's a really conference room, right? And, sat down and had a great conversation, shook his hand and all that. He was a remarkable guy to be in his presence. I mean, I still remember the president. I guess I've only met him once, right?
Yeah.
And he still left an impression upon me, even at then. So that's a good choice. That's a good choice, man. I literally forgot all about Imam Majid until you said it. And then as you started talking, I was like, wow, yeah, I mean, that dude was like real.
Exactly. And he, and I think he helps you understand, this is somebody, Imam Majid's father was the Mufti of Sudan. So just think about the Supreme Court Justice of Sudan. And he has but he uses his knowledge to make room for people, not to close people off, to bring people in. And, I think it's something that we just need more of.
Right. That's real, man. That's real. God, man, I forgot all about that brother, man. I'm like, man, he was a remarkable man. If I ever said a man amongst men, if I could describe a man amongst men that I've been able to meet in my lifetime, he would be one of them.
Alhamdulillah, I can see that.
He would be one of them. So last but not least, then we're going to tip over into the conversation. What is your observation of Black manhood, or Black Muslim manhood, and its association with wealth?
Black Muslim manhood is association with wealth. One of the things that this brings to mind is, what's the definition of a third world country? I know a lot of folks. I remember one of my close friends, she was thinking about moving to a third world country. And somebody was like, and her parents were like, why would you want to move there? Like, you're going to live hard. Third world country is not that it's going to be hard to live. The third world country, the definition is like, there's a big gap between rich and between poor, right? So there's really no middle class.
Okay.
And so what I often think about in terms of Black male wealth is that it's like a third world country. We have brothers who are doing very good, exceptionally good. right? Whether it's entertainment, whether it's sports, whether it's business, whether it's academia. And then we have other ones at the low end of the spectrum. And we don't have a good sense of folks who are just in the middle. And I think oftentimes, especially if you grow up from this low end of the spectrum, that the ideal is often rich, right? We don't think about, hey, I want to get to middle class. We think about, I want to get rich. And so the middle class can become of a kind of a like a bad idea, right? Because it's not the ultimate destination of being rich, rather than saying, hey, I just want to improve my family, right? We're here. I want to get to the next level. I want to get something that's sustainable. The idea is often getting rich. And so what that often creates is taking on gambles or taking on risk that will get you rich, but will also hurt you in the meantime where you're trying to establish a family. So it's, you know, it's almost like if you're behind in a baseball game and instead of trying to get a base hit, you keep swinging for a home run.
Right.
When you have to understand, like, hey, we're just trying to get on base. And, you know, part of that is that it takes sacrifice. You know, I remember one time I was talking to a young man and he asked me what I did for a living. And this is before my current job. And he asked me how I liked it. I said, well, you know, it's not really that enjoyable. And he was like, well, I don't want to be like you. I don't want to do something that I don't enjoy. And I said, well, that's what it means to be a man. What it means to be a man is not, hey, I do something I like for fun. That's what I did when I was a kid, right? What it means as a man is that I make sacrifices for my personal enjoyment so that I can build or do something for my family. And so I think we need to have this idea, not that we are not going to be entrepreneurs, not that we're not going to reach out, not that we're not going to take risks, but we're going to take calculated risks. The risk that you can take when you're 21 or 22 is not the same risk that you should be taking when you're 45. You have a wife, 4 kids, so on and so forth. So just understanding that balance is a lot what comes to mind when I think about. It's not that we don't have people in our community who are doing well. It's not that the average that we have. So when we look at statistics, right? And I know the community probably knows this, but there's 2 different ideas. There's the average, right? Which is, you know, we have 10 rich people, we have 10 poor people. The average is still middle of the road. But then you have, I think, the median, which it says, hey, if we put everyone on a list, we're going to take the person in the middle. And so that's the really statistic that we need to kind of focus on. If we look at where that middle person is, where are they? Are they below the poverty line? Are they middle class? Are they a secure middle class? And I think, like, even for me, when I just think about it, I feel like, you know, I had this thought that popped in my head. It's like, am I selling out to you know, and to our community or to our culture to tell them to be middle class, right? And it's not saying I don't want people to be wealthy or ultra wealthy, but I want our floor to be higher, right?
Oh, wow. Okay. I can see that. So it's not the idea of selling out. You're saying we need to get to levels. You're trying to jump. You're trying to jump levels. It's like, you know, I've been driving a Corolla for the last 30 years, 10, 15 years, and then I'm going to jump to a Bentley.
Yeah, exactly. I want you to get something dependable, right? Because like, if we're not dependable, who's going to be dependable? Like, we are the backbone, right? I remember talking to a Muslim brother after Juma, and he was talking about his job, and you know, it was just a regular corporate job. And he was talking about what he wanted to do. And I said, look, bro, you know, we were 30 years old. I said, part of what has to happen is that we have to have patience, right? Wealth comes with time. But you know what happens when we pay too much attention to, you know, social media stories, or, you know, we all know the stories of somebody who didn't go to college, you know, outside of entertainment or sports was able to make it big, right?
Right.
But that's not the standard, right?
Right.
That's the exception. And so we need to understand, hey, what is the standard for our community? Whether it's education or some kind of training, holding down a job, creating capital. And so when you want to invest in yourself, you don't have to take a loan out, or you don't have to kind of look for investors, that you have capital to kind of invest that you saved over time. You know, I think one of the things that in my current job where I work with investing is I understand for most people are not going to get wealthy until they're in their 50s or 60s. And that's not what young kids understand. Young kids understand it's like, oh, I want to be retired by the time I'm 40, by the time I'm 45. Like very few people, unless you're 6'6" and got a good jump shot, you're not going to be retired by the time you're 37.
Right. Right, for real. You know what I mean? And even in that, you know what I mean? Because I just actually went to looking at you know, sometimes, you know, I get told I take on a bunch of useless information, right? But it doesn't be useless. I have a thought, right? So I'm looking at CBA, you know, collective bargaining agreements, right? For athletes. I did it for the MLB. I did it for the NFL and the NBA, right? And when can they retire? How long does it take before they become vested? Right? And most saying it's like 3 years. Major League Baseball is 10 years, right?
Okay.
But, you know, NFL and NBA is 3 years, right? But they can't collect that money until they're 55. You see, even though they have retired at a certain age, 10 years, 12 years, whatever, they still can't take that money until they like, you know, one's like 45, one's like 55.
Definitely.
You know, and so then we start looking at people who said, okay, they retired, and you think they're taking an income from the organization still. But no, they're not. They're just retired.
Yeah.
You know, and you see somebody who's actually in the military and they retire after 20 years. They actually can receive a check.
Yeah.
But a guy who's played, you know, Major League Ball can't even receive a check after 20 years of playing. Right. And so he really have to really kind of rely on the money that he's actually made and make good investments with the money that he made. Because if he's trying to live off that retirement money, he can't do it.
Yeah, he's going to have to wait.
He has to wait.
You know, because even the money that's set aside has to grow so that it can take care of you in retirement. Because if they gave it to you, if you like people come out from college at 21, you use 3-4 years in the league, you're 25 years old. And even though they took money from you, that at 25, the average life expectancy is, 80 years old. So that's another 55 years.
Right.
If they take that money that they took out for the first 3 years or 4 years and they invest it for another 20 years, then that money is going to be something that then at 55, you can kind of, they can kind of give you residual income from that for the rest of your life. And I think one of the things that for many athletes is that the money that they took from the athletes while they were young is really what kind of saves them when they get older.
Right.
Because in their heyday, where you had all the pressure of keeping up with the Joneses, buying flashy cars, going out to expensive dinners, and other things of that nature, is that they're broke and that they don't really have a sustainable living until they get to that age where they can actually get some of their retirement funds, and then that gives them a level of stability.
And here we are looking at and I'm gonna double this back. We go to looking at, because a lot of times I think our eyes, even in the Muslim community, probably our eyes are still centered on who we believe are wealthy, rich. I don't even call it wealthy. Who we think are rich, right? And then our vision is to inspire towards being rich.
Yeah.
right? And then we have a determination who is rich,
Yeah.
right? We have a notion of who is rich,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so then our focal point is to get to where rich is,
Exactly.
not accumulating wealth.
Yeah, because we want what comes with what we think being rich. So, if you look rich, if you have on a lot of jewelry, if you have fancy cars, you might not have money in the bank, right? Because you have to exchange that money that you had in the bank or your investment account for those things that make you look wealthy, right?
Right.
And so we definitely have to like really kind of you know, the idea of keeping up with the Joneses. One of the books that I read recently, and I was about to give it for one of the answers to your questions, like the psychology of money, and
Okay.
it really goes deep into how do we understand money, because and what are we really looking for? Are we looking for happiness that's relative to how everyone else is living, right? Or are we looking for security for ourselves? And these are two very totally different things, right? Because
But it seemed like those situations there seem like they get merged somehow, though. The thought of them get merged somehow. You
tell
know,
me more.
when I start looking at the acquisition of wealth,
Mm-hmm.
how I'm living right now, I want to live nice, I want to live comfortable, I want to do this, I want to do that, but I'm not really thinking about tomorrow.
Yeah. Well,
My tomorrow is today.
Well, one of the things that he says in the book is that when the goalposts always change, you're never going to be satisfied,
Mm.
right? So if it's like, hey, I want to make $50,000, you make $50,000, and you look around and you're around people who make 50, and you see people who make 100, you're like, oh, well, I want to make 100, and then I'll be comfortable. And then you make 100, and you're around people to make it 100, and you see people who make it 300, and you're like, oh, I really need to make 300. So if the goalpost is always changing,
Mm-hmm.
right, you'll never get there to your destination. And so one of the things that wealth, especially in this country, especially in America, is that it keeps pushing the goalposts out. I'll be happy once, I'll be happy once I get a yacht. And then it's like, once you get a yacht, it's like, well, all these guys have a super yacht. And then, okay, well, you want to get a super yacht. And it is insatiable desires, right? Insatiable desires, because you're never going to get to your destination. I remember he talks about in his book, they were at this richest guy's house, and the guy has like several cars and paintings and all this. And so he was looking at a painting, and someone came up. He's like, man, he said, wouldn't it be great to be him? And he said, I have something he can never have. And the guy was like, what's that? Right? Because like, this guy's rich. What can you have that he'll never have? And he said, I have enough. Right? I have enough. So I can come in and admire these paintings. I can come in and admire his cars. But I am content with what God has given me. And the contented heart is something that, is invaluable, because if not, you're going to be continuously kind of chasing after the next thrill, the next high, because, often what we're doing with wealth is that we're trying to, at some level, it tells us something about ourselves. So at some level, whether it's $1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 100 million, it's like, I'm good enough. Right. But when you're chasing that, even when you get there will change, right?
Wow, there will even change.
You get there will change, and you won't get that feeling that you want. And so we really have to, and I think this is, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, look, Imam Hassan, you the one who told me this. Nothing fills the belly. Yeah. Go ahead. Because I know you said this several times.
Dust. Exactly.
And if you
because I'm sitting there thinking while you was talking, I said, man, there's the narration right there.
Yeah. And if you give the son of Adam a valley of gold, he'll want 2 valleys. So when there's an insatiable desire, you have to tell yourself, I'm going something after this. And so this is all the psychology that rules our thoughts about money. This is a psychology that allows us not to there's something that's in Surah Rahman it talks about mizan, and don't forget the balance. There's something that is really remarkable about being in the middle class, right? Is that, alhamdulillah, you're not worried about your housing, you're not worried about food, you're not worried about all these things. It's a great blessing from God, right? And you don't have, the problems that arise from having ultra wealth, so on and so forth. And we can't fathom, right? And alhamdulillah, I know, one of my close friends, he became wealthy, right? He's been working, so on and so forth. And he said, Hud, you always think about you achieving that number, right? Whatever that is, 1 million, 2 million, so on and so forth, that something's going to click, like something's going. And he said, when you get there, you realize that it's the same thing. Nothing really clicks over, so that you are, you have the same
I have arrived. You made that I have arrived moment. You got to that I have arrived moment.
And you realize that you have arrived, but you're right where you started, right? That all the feelings, all the insecurities, all the, all the kind of stuff that we deal with as human beings is still there. And so, you probably have a better vacation. You probably look around and, your house looks better. Maybe the car that you're driving is better. But you realize that it didn't really do what we thought it was going to do. Yeah. So we thought because we thought it was like paradise. Like we thought it was easy. And when we get there, we realize that no, it's still a struggle. The struggle is different. Now I own a business, and now not only do I have the pressure of providing for my family, I have the pressure of all these people who work with me, making sure that they can still provide for their family. It's a lot. Right. It's a lot of different pressure, and and some people can't take it when they're at that level. So it's the psychology of money is almost a start. Like one of the things that we're trying to do in our family is do like a book list of like relationship books, wealth books, Islamic books that young folks in our family should read. And so the psychology of money is the primer for the kind of wealth business kind of section for the family, like the psychology of money, understanding that going in. And then there's other things like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, other books that, kind of people know. But I think that's really a primer to kind of really put in perspective what we're actually going after, because we make so many mistakes in the pursuit of wealth that if we just were a little bit more patient, we would get there.
Right. I'm sitting there thinking, right, and I remember some years ago, I was in conversation with a sister, right, looking at marriage, right, and it just, it gave me some thoughts, because we was having a conversation, and I made a comment. Saying that guy got a Benz outside in my driveway, and she like, "You drive a Mercedes Benz?" I said, "No." I said, "No, I don't." You know what I mean? Because at the time I could still see. I'm still driving. You know what I mean? And so, she said, "You drive a Mercedes Benz?" I said, "No." And so, she said, "Because if you did, our conversation would be over." I said, "What?" Right? I said, "Well, okay." I said, I'm not riding like that anyway, first. But give me an understanding of why would it be over because if you can drive a Benz, you can give more money to the masjid, right? I said, but here's the thought. If I have a Benz, maybe I got the money to buy the Benz and give to the masjid all at the same time. Right? And so what my thought is that we have this thought here, either I got to be hella poor or hella rich and live in those spaces. And I'm hearing you say that there's a whole middle in here that we're really forgetting about.
Yeah, and the
pious being poor, or something got to be wrong with me if I'm rich.
Yeah. And look, I think one of the things that our community has surpassed has done a A+ job on being pious and being poor, right? Okay, we got that. We need to know how do we be pious at all these other different levels, right? Because there's often this idea of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he was poor, but the better kind of description of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that he didn't fear poverty. So he wasn't about collecting wealth for himself. He would freely give it away.
Right.
So he would give it away. He would give away sheep, camels. He understood what wealth was for, right? He didn't have this idea that, wealth is going to be, something that determines who I am, but really the kind of what I do with that wealth is going to kind of determine who I am. And so, there's a whole kind of, and then, also there's this idea that there's something wrong with making money, right? Like you had to kind of sacrifice something of our religion in order to get wealthy, which is also like, is the example of, example of thinking about where other people are, like how much they're giving, so on and so forth. And so it's like, we should want our community members to be rich and wealthy. I want Muslims to have all the wealth in the world. And that's what we had historically. Muslims were wealthy and really used that wealth to kind of establish society. Like that's the real, if anything, to be kind of jealous about is the people who are using their wealth to kind of establish institutions that are going to help Muslims, because this is the real currency, right? The real currency is what we do with the resources that we have, and wealth being one of them, time being another one, knowledge being another one, influence being another one. So, we have to really, get this relationship right with wealth, with rich, with our religion, so that and I think we have to get that right before we get money. Because if we get money before we get that psychology right about our faith, then we're going to be in more trouble, because it's going to be harder to tell somebody something when they're rich. Or
right.
When
they got something,
money.
right. They're not, they're adjacent, what they call rich adjacent, or
exactly.
It's going to be hard to tell them something at that point. Right.
And so they say money makes you more of who you are.
Right.
Right. And so working on who you are, or working on who our communities are when they're young, and then they get money when they're later, and they've already established the idea of generosity, the idea of contentment, the idea of what wealth is really for, is going to be better for us kind of in the long term.
So hitting you with this, I know you do a lot of, common sense investment, right? And we look at, especially for Black men, and I know we're definitely a drilled in segment of the Black, a subculture of the Black culture, right? Being a Black Muslim culture, being Black Muslim men. But we look at, we said 100% of men, we talk about how the earn power, right? How they earn, right? That 15% out of 100% maybe make six figures or better.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
Right. And I think that's, that can be adjusted, maybe that can be a margin of error of 3% up or down. Right. I don't think it's close to 20% at all. Right. But out of the 85% of those who make under 100,000, under six figures, a vast majority of that makes under $65,000. Right. Now, okay, let's do the math. All right. If you're making 60 grand, okay, tax is going to be what, 22%, maybe?
About that, yeah.
Right. So then that means 22% of your money is already gone. So that's another, let's say that's another 12 grand gone. Right. 12 grand, maybe 20 grand gone. No,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 15. What's that? 12? Yeah,
Yeah,
15.
yeah.
15 grand gone. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now you at what? 45. Right.
Yeah.
So per month, you may be making $3,000, $4,000, a little bit less than $4,000 a month. You bring home
Mm-hmm.
$4,000 a month, right? Let's say $1,000, less than $1,000 a week, right?
Okay.
Let's say you got a mortgage or you got a lease of $2,000 a month,
Okay.
right? So you already finna cut that in half,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
You're already cutting that in half, right? So then, and bear with me because I'm taking you through something right quick, right?
No problem.
So if I'm taking that half, I'm down to, if it's at 45, now I'm down to 22, right? Down to 22. So that means I got roughly $1,000 and a little bit over $1,000, close to $2,000 to work with. I still ain't paid no rent. I mean, I still ain't.
No. Yeah. You pay the rent. You pay the mortgage.
Rent, but I still ain't getting no overhead, no utilities.
Okay.
Pay no utilities. I ain't bought no food.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Okay, let's say I'm buying a car. I'm leasing. I'm buying a car. I'm purchasing the car, but I got a note on that car. Mm-hmm. Most notes around about between $300 to $500. Well, they actually a little bit more than that now. Almost like $600 and better now, depending on what you're buying. Right. Mm-hmm. That depending on what your credit score look like. Right. We ain't even got to that part yet. So so now if I just did that alone right there, I'm now knocking down. I done knocked into that $2,000 a month, a little bit less than $2,000 a month. I done knocked into at least 1,300 of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that means maybe miscellaneous movement per week. I got, because I ain't bought gas for my car, I ain't bought gas for the kids. I ain't, got to get them some money if I got kids. You know what I mean? Let's say I've got 2.3 kids or 2.1 kid or whatever. You know what I mean?
0.1 kid likes to eat a lot of food.
Exactly. That tapped into more of my food purchasing. You know what I mean? And so, okay, then if I want to try to go out. So what I'm saying is that at the end of the month, if I done spent all the way out, I might have about $150 or $100, really, without touching a credit card.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What can I do with that $100, man, to ensure my future moving forward?
Okay. Wow. Okay. Young man making probably around $65,000.
Right.
And then he probably has $100 left over at the end.
At the end.
Okay. At the end. First of all, not to focus just on that $100. First of all, that $100, we ain't future planning with that $100. That $100 is to kind of preserve that lifestyle, because that lifestyle is a one headache, one storm, one shock away from being underwater.
But being exactly. Okay.
So we're not doing nothing with that 100. We just putting that 100 in the bank so we can absorb any shock to that system.
Right. That's a savings for the rainy day, not for future planning.
That's the rainy day. It's saving, and so we just putting that away because rain is going to come. It's not if it rains, it's when it rains.
When it rains.
And if you don't have nothing when it rains, then you're going to back. But a couple of things before we get there, and this is the important part. Number one is that before you get your paycheck in your account, you should have already been saving in your 401k plan, in your simple IRA, in your employer savings account. So, for example, if your employer has a 3% matching contribution, you put in your 3%, your employer puts in your 3%. So if you make $65,000, you already saved $500, right? You already saved $500-$600, right? So you already have that. Number two, that your 401k can also act as a buffer for those rainy days, because you can actually take a loan out of your 401k without paying any taxes or any penalties when life happens, or if you want to buy a car, or if you want to buy a home. And so, a lot of times is that, it's not pretty when I had to tell someone that, hey, look, what can I do with this $100 to get rich? And I'm saying nothing. Like this is not, we're not talking about rich. We're talking about sustainability because look, you're working at a job, you're making $65,000. It sounds like your spouse is not working. So you're raising a family where your wife can be there and make sure that the kids have something to eat. They have someone to come home to. They have someone to help them with their work. So first thing I'm gonna tell them, brother, you're doing it, period. Like, like if you looking at someone on Instagram and you looking at these young kids who got no responsibility and got flashy cars, no, you're doing it. You're taking care of kids. And I think that the thing that we have to understand a lot of times is that we are achieving and we don't recognize it, right? You are winning. You are winning as a father, as a husband. You're doing you are the superhero, right? You're doing and so if you are that brother, and I've been him, right? Who is, paycheck to paycheck, slowly kind of, right? And then you feel like you're losing. That's when you're going to go out and try to marry someone else. So that's when you will go out and try to get some new car to make you feel good. Or that's when you'll quit your job to do something else. It's like you're winning right where you are. But there's two things I want to talk about. I want to talk about what you do before that and what you do after that. So to go back first is, hey, look, if I know that this is the reality that I want. I talk to young men and they were like, oh, I don't want to go to college. I don't want to get training. But they want to say they want to be a husband. And it was like, well, what are you going to do? And they were like, well, I'm a rapper. And it's like, okay, well, look, do whatever you want to do.
Right.
But J. Cole was a teacher before he's this like international rap star. It's like, so what are you going to do in the meantime to kind of take care of your family? So when you go to, Imam Hassan and you go to Brother Muhammad or Brother Bilal, and you're saying, I'm interested in your daughter, he's not like, well, and so what are you going to do in the meantime? So saving up money when you're young and being able to purchase a house, or saving up money when you're young so you already have a savings, like a kind of bedrock, a rainy day fund. So now that $100 can be used for investment. These are the kind of early steps that you can use to kind of help you when you're in, like there's a kind of early career lag where you're just kind of treading water. Right. You're just treading water. And so when you're in this trying to treading water, the worst thing you could do is be impatient and try to blow it up and try to get, try to do something more than where you're at. So that's what it is going back. And then what is it going forward? Because like, for example, you bought a house, you had a mortgage, and so what you can do is says, hey, like, now we got 2.3 kids. We had that third kid. So now we got 3 kids. So we're going to buy another house and we're going to rent out the house that we had. Right. So now we're going up. Now we're getting more assets, so on and so forth, in a very natural way. Right. You still have that house. You can rent it out. You can find someone in the community to rent it. And now you have a new house. And then at the same time, you're putting money into your 401k every year. That 401k is growing. And your career, right, is also growing. So most people are not going to stay at 65. And so your kind of basic needs and necessities are kind of hit like a plateau. Like, you're not going to, for a 3-bedroom house, your water bill is not going to go from $200 to $600, right? Your utility bill is not going to go from 200 to like 1,000. So a lot of those things where you've been trading water, when you start making more money, your expenses don't necessarily have to grow up the same way. But what we do, where we get in trouble, is that now instead of having those used cars, now we got to get new cars every 3 years. Now, instead of, driving to Virginia Beach or driving to somewhere for a vacation, now we want to fly to Turkey because someone else was flew in Turkey, right? So now the kind of things that we live our life, that's when we started like, okay, now we're going on $5,000-$10,000 vacation every year. Now we're buying new cars. Now we're buying, instead of going up into a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom, you want to go to a 5 or 6. That's when you start trying to keep up with the Joneses. Now, right? Like I'm about to say something that's controversial, right? Now I've been treading water. I've been kind of unhappy because I don't feel like I'm growing. Now I'm having problems in my marriage and I go through a divorce that's going to destroy wealth. Right?
I don't know why. I don't know what you said. Controversial. That's real. That's real. Yeah.
And so if someone is going through that level and they feel frustrated, right, then that's going to lead to more problems in a relationship. Mm-hmm. But if you go through that level and say, yo, brother, you're killing it. You're exactly where you want to be. Just be patient. It's coming along. Mm-hmm. And then once you get that 65, now you're going to make money. You're going to make 75, 85. You might get another job. You might get these awesome opportunities. And now you're making more money. Now you're putting in 3% of your salary. And so now you're going to have $300,000 in your 401k plan. So if anything happens, you can take a loan from your 401k. You can put down a house. And so that's how you build wealth. But the problem is our expectations are different. That person who's like treading water thinks they're supposed to be like, you know, swimming or
they must be full out stroking Michael Phelps action. You know
Michael Phelps. And the problem with that is because they don't understand that this is the path, because we don't have the track record that other communities have. Like other folks, right, that might have lighter skin, their father was like, oh, I was right here. Or their father was like, they can see their parents who are 65, 70, who have a great retirement, or are able to travel, who are able to live the life that they want. So they can see themselves on that path. We have been trading water and we're like, oh, we're losing. Oh, we're like, you know, we're poor. It's like, no, you're rich. And so we just need to know to just be patient. Wealth is coming. So for example, like say if you're this person and you're 35, right? And you have, say you have $50,000 in your 401k. Okay. And you know, at a 10% rate of return for your investment in your 401k, that means that it's going to double on average every 7 years. So if you're 35 and you got 50, at 42, you're going to have 100. At 49, you're going to have 200. At 56, you're going to have 400. At 63, you're going to have 800. Right.
So you're just in your 401k, you really kind of became a millionaire, just a lightweight in that.
Over time.
Like,
over time. Like, bro, you're killing it. Or sister, you're killing it. Over time. You're right where you're supposed to be. But if you go through a divorce, hey, we're going to split that joint in half. If you go through a divorce, real talk, for those brothers who are like out there struggling at 65, their wife is at home, they're not working. Okay, you go through divorce. Now you're basically in polygyny, where you're going to have to get another rent for yourself. And yes, you are going to have to
pay for her.
Or you can just say, I'm going to take the kids yourself. You can take the kids yourself, but then you're going to need some help because, hey, I can't travel 40% of the time if there's no one at home to take care of my children. Right. I can't go out there and grind 10, 12 hours a day if my baby's got to eat. Right. And so, you know, I hope your mother can come visit. If not, it's going to get into your grind time.
Right.
And so part of the challenge, and I think this is an excellent question, is the folks who are living paycheck to paycheck, they think they're doing something wrong, but they're not doing something wrong. That's just where you are on the road. You know, I think one of the expectations for us is that we don't understand that, you know, I was talking to this Muslim sister at the Atlanta Masjid. Her husband passed away, and they were married for 40 years. I said, how was it being married for 40 years? She said, at first it was rough, then it became smooth. And so, and it just like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, how many people don't get through the rough spots in order to get to the smooth spot?
Right.
And so, like, yes, being paycheck to paycheck is rough. Make sure you budget. Make sure you don't spend more than you have. Make sure that you live below your means, and keep working hard in your job. Like most people, they hit their pinnacle of where they are in their career between roughly like 40 and 60. not at 32, not at 33. You might, you've probably been to work, 3-4 years, so on and so forth.
Right. You
And
probably have
some
about 2,
people,
3, 4 different jobs by in that time span.
exactly. And so, but once you get into like upper 30s or 40s, that's when you're going to be experienced. That's when you're going to come into meeting rooms where people want to ask you, well, what do you think? Right? You've been in this for a decade. We often think, this is the culture that we live in. Like a 22-year-old, is coming into a conference room telling people what they think, and you looking at them like, you better take some notes.
Right.
You tell us what you think.
Hey, go get us some coffee.
And get some coffee and be grateful to be in the room to understand these things. Ask questions, right? And so, like, for those people who are living paycheck to paycheck, like, if you do those things, look, work on your marriage. Marriage is a wealth creator. Divorce is a wealth destroyer.
Exactly.
Work on your marriage. Work on and make sure you're living, and you are going to get to the destination. It's just a matter of time. And we don't have that message coming to us. And so, like, literally, these people think they're losing when they're just, I forgot, it was a song or it was a movie, and it says, imagine that you gave up a mile away from the victory.
Oh, wow.
Imagine that you gave in right when the victory was just over the next hill.
Right, it's right in your grasp. It's right there.
Yeah.
It's right there.
And it's because if you're listening to someone saying, hey, these are the things to do. Hey, focus on your marriage, focus on your kids. Because, what happens is, a lot of times you're that age, you're like, okay, I'm not making enough, so I'm just going to grind. You ruin your marriage, right? You don't spend time with your kids. And you get to your destination. Okay, now you get this big contract, so on and so forth. And you like, hey, kids, y'all want to spend time with me? And they're like, nah. Right? You like, and then you look over and you're like, where's your wife? And she's like, yo, I'm done. I'm out. And he was like, what happened? It was like, oh, well, you got to the destination you want, right? You didn't want to do it. Someone that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Right? And so you just left everyone behind and you went fast. And look, and it's important to have that kind of support. Like, if you have someone say, hey, sweetheart, I really want to grind. And she's like, no problem. This is your idea. I want to support you. That's why I'm staying home. So that, if you're working 10 hours and then you're coming home and I'm taking care of you, that enables you to put in that work and grind the way that you want to, because you have a secure, solid base at home. And in the other instance is where you have, and the wife wants to go back to work because they want to understand that could be a powerful kind of economic engine to what the husband is kind of, responsible for providing for. Okay, so I'm taking care of all this, and so now my wife works as a nurse. She works as a school teacher. She works part-time. And now she could take that money and kind of invest it because she doesn't have to worry about paying for groceries, or she doesn't have to worry about paying for the light bill or water bill. So we're going to take that money and we're going to invest it for our long-term success, or just even invest it for herself. I think historically women have been very wealthy in our religion because they haven't had the kind of financial requirements to pay other bills. So they can take that money and be generous with it. They can take that money and be charitable with it. And so we have to start having those kind of conversations, those kind of thoughts, because, when we have people are on the right track, but think they're falling back, that's when they're going to take on decisions and other things, quit their job to kind of, do something that's a little bit more riskier. And I'm not talking about not taking on risk, but it's important to understand when you want to take on that reality of entrepreneurship, it's like, and what's at stake when you're at the level of an entrepreneur. Like, for example, if you're 50 years old and, your youngest child is 18 and you say, okay, I'm going to take on this risk, your kids should be at the level where they can kind of, they can come out and kind of work for themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're 23 and you want to start off with entrepreneurship, then you're okay. Look, hey, I'm just going to stay with pops. I'm going to stay with moms. I'm going to just stay in our basement, help them out, give them some money while I'm trying to build this wealth. But, we got 36-year-old brothers with 5 kids and one on the way being like, okay, I'm just going to, you got a lot at risk. So understanding not to not take on risk, right? And not to, because, even me, inherently, because how I grew up, I'm risk averse. My father's an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And so even when I want to take on risk, my dad is like, no, bro, you got too much at risk. Take care of your family. That's very important. But there's going to be a time where my youngest is 10. There's going to be a time in the next, 8 years where I'm still going to be 55. Right. Mm-hmm. And we think we have this idea of entrepreneurship that is like that you got to do it in your 20s. When you look at, or we like everybody got to do it like Bill Gates. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who become entrepreneurs at 50, at 55. You know why? Because they have a lot of their own capital. They have, mm-hmm. $400,000 in their 401k they can use to start. They have experience where they've been, have a master's and
right, and they build networks. They build connections to where they can kind of move into certain things.
Exactly.
It is mitigate or minimize risk at that point.
Yeah, exactly. It's minimize risk. They have all those things that they have those networks to raise money with. Like when you're 50, other people who are wealthy who can invest in you. When you're 25, you're trying to encourage people.
You're trying to meet these people, right?
Yeah, exactly. Your friends don't got the money.
Exactly.
Right? Well, you're 50, your friends might have the money.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how those are the folks we're trying to reach in general, to say, hey, look, bro, you're not behind. You're behind because someone sold you the wrong kind of roadmap.
Right.
I remember I was going to this place called the Secret Beach, and they said, Hud, to go to the Secret Beach, it's the most beautiful place on this island, right? Mm-hmm. It said you're going to be on a road for 2 miles, like a paved road, and then you're going to have 1.5 miles of gravel road. And you're going to be on that gravel road for so long that you're going to think you're not on the right direction. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to be back on a smooth paved road or like on a dirt road.
Right.
So I went on this journey to the Secret Beach, and we're in a golf cart, right? So you're not going fast. So like 1.5 miles.
Oh, wow. And it's rough. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's rough. And so your first 2 miles, like no problem, going 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour. And then we got on a gravel road. We were on a gravel road for so long that I was like, oh man, we probably should go back. This ain't the right direction. I think we did something wrong. We must have took a turn. I couldn't see it. And then I wanted to turn back. And I remember what they said. It said, you're going to be on the gravel so long that you're going to want to turn back. Mm-hmm. But keep on the gravel road. And so what that did is that set expectations for me. Because if he told me, hey, it's just 3 miles on this road and then you're going to be there, I would have turned around a long time ago. As soon as I hit that gravel, I would have turned around. But my expectations were so high that it's going to be 1.5 miles of gravel road. And so people think their expectations, you get a job, you're a school teacher in corporate America, that I just going to be rich. But you got to say, hey, look, there's going to be 5 or 10 years where maybe your income is kind of stable, or maybe, you're having kids, you're going through this or that. You're not going to have a lot of money to kind of save and invest. Just do a little bit, just like a little bit, very steady. And so, but the expectation is like, oh, well, I'm going to get out of college. I'm going to get trained. And, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be, a multimillionaire. It's like, I don't even know where this expectation comes from. And it only could come from screens that we watch, whether it's TV, Yo MTV Raps, or,
right. Whatever might be out there now, right?
Yeah. And it's like, hey, look, slow and steady. And when you do that, you're realizing that we don't want to have wealth at the cost of everything else, because getting to the wealth goal and leaving your family behind, that's not winning, right? Getting to the wealth goal and leaving your community behind, that's not winning, right? So we want to go far and we want to go together. And so just understanding that, and it, and somebody has to be the leader, right? Like, if your parents can't show you that one of your major jobs is to show that for the people who are coming after you.
Okay.
If you see that growing up, it's incumbent upon you to say, hey, I want to show that for people who are coming behind me. So they can't say, I didn't see it being done, right?
Okay.
And so, and if you're that first person, it's going to come with a lot of sacrifice.
That's a catch in there though, right? Mm-hmm. Because I know it's a saying that person can't give what they don't have, right? Mm-hmm. And so now what I'm hearing you say is then you have to recognize you don't have, then you have to go acquire the knowledge to be able to pass it on, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I don't know what I don't know, right?
Alhamdulillah.
And so, but this is what I know this here, but I don't call it this. I understand a lifestyle of debt and what that looks like. That looks like me going out here, making high-end purchases, looking like something that I'm probably not, doing a bunch of things that I probably don't, because I'm really trying to if I'm told, especially a man, if I'm told that I don't have this, then you some broke ninja, right?
Not a broke ninja.
Yeah, no broke ninja, right? I'm trying to do better with my language, right? You some broke ninja, right? And so, so nobody wants to be labeled or classified. No man wants to be classified or labeled as this. He has a status that he on. Every man want to have a status, and everybody can say, man, if you ain't this, there's something wrong with you. Again, like you say, whatever screen you look at, they have a whole bunch of screens that saying, if it's your phone, if it's your tablet, if it's your computer, if it's your television, they're saying that this is what success looks like. And if you're not here, then something's wrong with you. Yeah. So then we get caught up into the fake it till you make it type of joint, right? So I got to have all the trappings that look like I done made it, but I really haven't made it.
Nothing lies to us like our own insecurities about what we see on the screen, right? Mm-hmm. Like, like, look, like sometimes I watch these videos on Instagram and like the video will show someone going into the refrigerator. And then it hits me that they had to put their phone in the refrigerator, close the refrigerator, walk to the refrigerator, press record, close the refrigerator, walk to the refrigerator, open it up like they're trying to get something. Like it's basically Hollywood in 12 seconds. And we're comparing our life to that. Like, look, even my wife knows I'm not going to be Denzel. Even my wife knows Denzel is not Denzel. Right. Right. Go ask Denzel's wife. No, like, no offense, Denzel. I love you, bro. Right. But even you not like who you expect to be in the movies. Right.
Even you ain't him who you show in the movie. Right.
Like Denzel ain't him. Denzel's just Denzel. And so the hard part is understanding these 12 seconds bits of Hollywood are just as fake as Hollywood. Right. Like, like you remember Rocky?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a hit in real life like you see in Rocky?
Oh man, they just some devastating hits, man. They be jumping, I'm coming all out there.
Rocky would take 12 haymakers and then just like stumble and then come back. And you watch real boxing and like, one of those haymakers, people ain't waking up for a week. Right.
Exactly.
So we understand this Hollywood. We understand WWE is not real wrestling.
Right.
But we don't understand. Look, and I'm not talking about anybody else except for myself, because when you scrolling up, you just start believing, right? You just start believing. And so all of that is Hollywood. Like, we all understand the idea of keeping up with the Joneses, but we all still do it, right? Keeping up with the Joneses is like it's inculcated in our DNA. And so we have to be aware of it because we have to stop it because
so we have to fight against them urges. We have to fight
we
against
have
those.
we have to fight against the urges because that will trap us of not, and we have to have, if like if you didn't see that growing up, right? Like my father didn't have a regular 9-to-5 job. My father was an entrepreneur. My father was a single father who was raising 4 kids. And so, it was a struggle off and on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't see it, but I'm also knowing that I'm creating that for my children. And so you have to leverage the community. You have to leverage the advice of brother. And look, there's a lot of sisters who say, look, I see you, young man. I see you trying to take care of your family. My mother-in-law was like, the world could say whatever about me. They could call me a broke, whatever. Right. My mother-in-law was bringing me food to work. And so, I'm like, if nobody else in the world loved me, she loved me. Right. And so having those people, and that's why community is important, because it's more than just what you see from your own kind of personal experience, because it's the collective wisdom of the community who's giving you the experience. Like I tell young people, like, yo, keep at it. Like, I know it's tough. And that's, like, I think we forgot this idea of sacrifice. Mm-hmm. Like, what does it mean to sacrifice? Means that you don't get what you want today so that you can get what you want tomorrow. My father, one of the things my father kind of, the things that your parents tell you so much of that you just like roll your eyes. He talked about delayed gratification. Yeah, mm-hmm. Delayed gratification. I'm like, okay, all right, Dad, delayed gratification. But this is what we're talking about. We're sacrificing today for tomorrow, delaying your gratification today for tomorrow. This is the same principle in investments. So people who delay their gratification, don't spend their money, save and invest their money for the long term, are going to be able to be better in retirement or when they're older. But that's the same thing as our religion, right? It says that paradise is better and longer lasting. Like this dunya is a prison for the believers. Right. We are delaying our gratification. Like that's what Ramadan is about. Like I don't eat breakfast, I don't eat lunch, but that water and that date,
right?
At iftar,
like, right?
Look, yeah, that food, you like, oh my God, when do my wife's lentils get so good? You like, man, this is the best meal I ever had, right? And so we have to understand that that's part and parcel of what we're doing on the small end of the day, and also on its large end, and invest in it. And definitely with our religion or our faith, that we're not, and like when I say delayed gratification, these young folks who are married, like you still have a wife, bro. You still get to come home to a wife. You're out here working and you get to come home to your wife, and she's not working, and she should be able to like raise your kids and teach them about our faith and teach about who the prophet is, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so knowing that we're on the right track, and knowing that if we just stick with the destination, like what if you gave up on a relationship where the smoothness was just a month away, right? Allah is going to change someone's heart. Allah is going to change his heart. And, nobody's trying to tell you to deal with things like abuse or physical abuse.
Right. Well, that's something different. We're talking something different. Right.
We're just talking about the everyday struggles that like people go through.
Right.
And so
sometimes it's like feast or famine. Sometimes it looks like feast or famine.
Exactly. And so when we think about long-term investing, we're telling people that look, you're going to make it in your 50s and 60s. You got to earn it in your 20s and 30s, and it's by your 50s and 60s you're going to see it. I remember at the masjid we had a brother who was in the army. He worked for the city and he worked for the state government. And this brother worked all his life, just got up at 8, got up at 6, went to work, came home, every day. And now he's, 65, 70 years old, and he has a Social Security retirement. He has retirement from the army. He has retirement from the city. He has retirement from the state. He's making $150,000.
Right.
But he worked for that his whole life. Right. And so we see him and like, oh man, he like lucky he fell into that. No,
Oh,
he
right.
worked
He
with
put that.
that
He put that time in. He put
for
time in for
40
that.
years. Yeah,
Right.
he put that time in. And so
Mhm.
understanding that, that time factor. And also, I have to say this, right? When
Okay.
you got 5,000, you got 10,000, you got 100,000, and the idea of missing out comes up. Oh, well, brother,
Mhm.
we got this new crypto, uh, so and so coin, so and so squab, so and so investment opportunity. You got to get in here. The idea that I have to supercharge it, right, is,
Mhm.
oh, you can't miss out. I invested in this. It's like a 40% return. Just kind of do this. Is I'm not saying that you don't take any risk, but that you separate. Hey, this is the part that I'm going for the long term. This is the part that I'm willing to take some risk on. That this is my wealth bucket, and this is my try something out. Take some chances bucket, and don't
Right.
get them confused. And so, too oftentimes, we take from our wealth bucket to try something out. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, people are going to lose, right? You're going to, some people are like, it's like the dot-com bubble in
Right.
the 90s. A lot of
Oh,
people made
man.
money
Mhm.
and a lot of people lost money. But the
Mhm.
only thing that the only story that really sticks to us is those who made money.
Mhm.
The only story that sticks to us in the news is bad things, right?
Mhm.
But the only stories that sticks to us in wealth is like, oh, so and so made money, but you don't think about all the people. Like there's a lottery winner. There's a lottery winner,
Right.
but there's a lot of lottery losers,
Losers. Right.
right? There's a lot of people who didn't win that lottery, and there's like one group or one ticket that wins. And of course,
Mhm.
we're always like, I'm going to be that one. I'm going to be that
Right.
one. But there's a lot of people who are losing that money, and so just kind of understanding. Uh,
You say that, man, because I mean, just even some disclosure for myself with something like that, that's how people get scammed.
mhm, mhm.
And I mean, I got hit. I ain't gonna sit there and act like and I think, I'm probably I believe myself to be probably the most intelligent person around, and I read people pretty well and miss that whole joint.
Mhm, mhm.
Because my idea of the money that I was getting ready to try to make had kind of blinded me to what was really probably potentially going on.
Yeah, it's human nature. It's and
Hmm.
and when people, and that's why you have to, because people will ask me about different things, and I say, "Do you understand that?" They were like, "No." I said, "Then you shouldn't invest in it. If you don't understand it, don't invest in it." Then they're like, "Well, I might miss out. This is it." It's like, okay, you might miss out on a good thing, but you'll probably miss out on 10 bad things,
Hmm.
right? And and that's the idea of financial planning. So financial planning is where we take you where you want to be, right? You tell us where you want to be. I want to have $80,000 of residual income. I want to have 120, and you tell us where you want to be. We look
Hmm.
at where you are, like you're right here. You make 60,000, you make 65, you got X amount in your 401k, and we tell you whether or not you're on track. So if you're on track, then you don't need to take. If somebody say, "Hey, this is a great idea," it's like, "Hey, I'm fine. I'm on track." If you're behind, then you know what you got to do. I need to save more,
Right.
so on and so forth. But too oftentimes, that um, that they pull on our human nature to kind of get us to to uh to do things that are not in our best interest. And and the idea that, yeah, you might miss out on something good, but you're probably gonna it's like a it's I'm not going I'm not going to use that one, but you'll probably miss out on a good thing, but you'll
Hmm.
probably also miss out. It's almost like having standards, right?
Hmm.
Like if you have standards for marriage, for all this other things, and you're like, my standard is X, right? You talk to people, you talk to Imam Hassan, you talk to people that you respect, and you set the standard. And things that don't meet that standard, you say goodbye to. You might probably say goodbye to a good opportunity, but
Right.
you probably saved yourself from
From about a
10
bunch of bad
times,
ones.
yeah, exactly,
Hmm.
for 10
Hmm.
times as much bad opportunities. And so, you have to have a little discernment, because, the bad moves are really costly. The
Hmm.
good moves take time. And then then when you have that bucket, and then you know that I'm putting at risk money that I have to put at risk, right? And then our human nature always wants us to get the best of something, but we don't have retroactive insight. If that was the case, we all would have bought Amazon 20 years ago and wouldn't be sitting here,
right? Yeah, everybody would have bought Bitcoin when Bitcoin was like whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and the people would say, like I'm a professional. I have standards. I have things that I can say. I have things I can't say. Right. But people say, I told y'all. Like, if I look at everything you told me over the last 10 years, I still will be down 40%. Right. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, you were right about some of them, and you're wrong about some of them. So stop acting like I'm just going to cherry pick my winners and be like, y'all should have listened to everything I said. If I listened to everything you said, I'd be down by 40%. Right. And so it's not, it's not that, and it's, there's not a better word than like, most of the things that are just going to do well over time are not as sexy. They're just not as exciting. It's just pretty much standard.
Right. Not as glamorous, not as glossy and polished and all that.
I'm gonna tell you, most sisters, right? And, they can come after me. Like, nobody will come after me. Nobody cares, right? Like, they don't even want that person who's just steady. Like, I'm a school teacher. I'm just going to be working. I'm going to take care of my family, so on and so forth. That doesn't look appealing. Like, what does he do? He's just a school teacher. He's not making money like this, NBA player, right? And so it's like, but these are like solid men who care about their wives, who care about their communities, who care about their families, who are putting one foot in front of the other foot, who are going to just make sure that they're being responsible for their families, and they're going to be successful, right? They're going to be successful in the long term. But oftentimes we're like, oh, well, we're looking for something that's a little bit more exciting, a little bit more like, well, I think he's going to be a rapper and he's going to blow up. Well, maybe, but
or he got status, he don't have status, or he got this overall appeal that's just going to be magnificent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But really, you're really going to be a bust. But you don't know that because his trappings look good right now.
Woo. Yeah, the trappings are, and that's in marriage. It's the same thing for men and for brothers and sisters in marriage. That's in marriage. That's in wealth. That's in careers. So it's like really being true to yourself, really trying to, cut out the noise. And look, we live in an environment where instead of cutting out the noise, we like run to the noise.
We run to it.
Yeah. So we get a new Instagram account. We got TikTok. We got WhatsApp. We're just inundated with all this, just the constant. And so we really don't know who we are, and we really don't know what we kind of want for ourselves, because we're often like looking at ourselves juxtaposed to someone else. Right. So we're like, oh, that person got a better car than me. That person got a better house than me. That person got more in savings than me. Well, like, what do you want, Hud? Because, like, honestly, and maybe for you, it's like you really want the top of the line car. Okay. Right. So just figure that out and make sure that you get a 2-year lease and just roll that over. So it's not saying that you can't have the things that you want, but make sure that what you want is to make it work for the long term, not just, not just the short term. And, and that's in, all aspects of our life.
Now, subhanAllah, Hud, this has been very, very informative. Your conversation today has been very informative. You made me think about it, and I'm going to ask you kind of give us a couple of quick pointers. I remember when I first got my master's, and when I was in my master's program, they fed you, oh, when you get your master's, you can go ask for this type of money, and you can do this and this and this and that, right? And, I bit the hype, you know what I mean? And it's automatically, my income was supposed to double. Right? What the hell they do that at? You know what I mean? Now I'm thinking about it, man. You just nutty. You know what I mean? But at the time, I'm in the back. I'm going for the hype. You know what I mean? I literally left a job without a job,
Mm.
thinking that I was going to get a job because I had a master's degree now.
Mm.
I literally left a job.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it was like, oh man, because they pissed me off. Right? I got pissed off. Right? So I was emotionally deregulated like a mug with this, right? And so I left a job thinking, you know what? That's all right. I got a master's now. I ain't got to worry about these cats. You know what I mean? They got the good old boy system going on here anyway. I'll go somewhere else. Somebody going to pay me my worth. I'm going to make more money. Even if I'm making, 30,000 more than I'm making right now, I'm going to be even better because I can command this type of money. I'm going to ask for this salary, and realizing I'm dead in the middle of hitting they say recession, right? But really, recession really kind of hit like a year before the recession actually get told that you're in a recession. You know what I mean? I'm in a recession. They ain't hiring nobody. Right? Ain't nobody getting hired for nothing. Right? So now I'm out of a job, without a job. You know what I mean? And so now it was some things I was able to capitalize on. You know what I mean? I just wasn't without money, but that was the foolish thing that I ever did. Because I had the thought that I was, not that I wasn't worthy or something, that I can command this particular thing because I'm just going to show up and you're going to give me what I want because, not saying that I ain't really got the deep experience. You know what I mean? It's a whole bunch of things that go surround with that. And that's what you told us today.
Yeah.
Right? There's a whole setup that has to take place before you even make it to that.
Yeah.
There's a rule. There are some exceptions, but there's a rule that we have to follow. And before we can make it from here, and then we start talking about we're going to be ultra rich or whatever, because we use the word ultra rich in this instance. That we still need to matriculate through the middle class aspect. Yeah. And sometimes even the middle class is kind of what they consider high. Some of us might even think that's rich.
Yeah.
When it's really just middle class.
And we also have what's called a very fragile middle class. So a fragile middle class is saying something can happen that will take you from the middle class back down to kind of, poverty or right above poverty or like, and so especially for Black Americans, it's a very fragile middle class. You don't have a lot to kind of lean back on.
Right.
And for other communities, they have a middle class where, you're 25, 26, you want to buy a house with your family. Your parents can give you $50,000. No problem. They just like, boom, here, start your first house. And so one of the things that we often talk about is starting investing for our children when they're younger, right? You invest a small amount when you're young, then they have money to kind of supercharge them buying a home, collecting assets, so on and so forth. And, I think job opportunities and career paths are, can be kind of relationships, right? There's some general rules that you should kind of understand, but then everything is different. Like, so, you would, if you get a master's, you do have better credentials than someone who doesn't have a master's, or someone doesn't have an undergrad, but you still got to go get it. Right. Like, I'm not a fisherman, but when I put bait on the hook, it ain't automatic that when I throw it in that a fish is going to pop out.
Right? Exactly.
So it's like, you have better bait, but you still need to make sure that you're in an environment where there's a lot of fish.
Exactly.
You got to make sure there's not a lot of other baits out in that environment. And
exactly.
So, it's, and sometimes you're going to win on risk and sometimes you're going to lose on risk. But how can you take a risk where you know that the alternative that you have is good enough for you? Like, if I leave this job, alternative I have, maybe I go back to school. Maybe, I have the side job. I have the side hustle. I have some consulting entrepreneurship that I can do in the meantime because I have a master's until I find that other thing that I want or that I like, or so on and so forth. So it's, no one has the answers, right? Except for, 20-second TikTok videos. They're the only ones.
So they got all the answers.
Yeah, they got all the answers.
20
They got the
seconds.
answers to finance, to relationships, to spirituality, to all things in 20-second bites.
Mm-hmm.
So
Hey, before we get out of here, we're gonna go and end it, man. Give us a couple key things. Give us a lot. If I kind of just get us synchronized a little bit. If I was to prioritize, if you gave us a prioritized way of thinking of it or something, and again, this would kind of be your 20-second TikTok video in a sense, but but if you from your expertise, what is the 2 things, maybe 3 at the most, that we can do that can get us started, or some of us who are younger and some of us who may have to retool? I don't know if you can kind of merge those together, right? But what is it that we can do to start moving in that world, into that realm of middle class and wealth?
Definitely. So first one, I'm going to start early. Start saving early. So the earlier you have your money working for you, the better that you're going to be able. So if you start investing, and even if you're not young yourself, right, that we can all teach our children, our grandchildren, to start saving early. So when your kids have $100 from birthday for something, like, put part of that in an investment account. Let them invest that along with our values. And I think, Islamic finance has come a long way, and you don't have to sacrifice our values for investments, right? So there's ways to kind of invest, but invest along with our values. There's a whole industry that makes sure that the companies we're buying are not selling pornography, alcohol, gambling, riba-backed ventures. They're not investing in companies that are making weapons of mass destruction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's number one. Number two is that the U.S. retirement accounts, like the 401ks, so on and so forth, are only at best 80 years old or so.
Okay.
But that our Quran talks about retirement and talks about investing. And this is why the Quran, our scripture, is so magnificent. So there's educations about history, there's education about science, there's education about finance and investing, right? And it's not where you expect it, right? And so when you look at Surah Yusuf, and the Pharaoh had a dream, the Pharaoh's dream about 7 fat cows and 7 lean ones, and 7 green ears of corn and 7 other withered.
Right.
And when they asked Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam about the interpretation of this dream, he said, you're going to have 7 years of great harvest, right? Where you're going to have plenty. And then you're going to have 7 years of famine. And eventually he said, put me in charge of the storehouses, because I will take from those years of good harvest to provide for those years where the harvest is not going to be as good. And this is what we're talking about in retirement. We're talking about, if the average person uses 80 years, the first 20 years you're learning, the last 20 years you're slowing down. You have these middle 40 years are going to be the years of great harvest. Okay. And so you have to take from those years that you're going to make the most money to provide for those years where you're going to be a little slower. And so that idea is exactly what the idea is in the 401k, because for your retirement accounts, it's not, retirement is not an age, it's a number, right? So if you think about, if you have $1 million in a retirement account, and then at a 7% rate of return, that can create $70,000 of annual income for you every year for the rest of your life. And you still have $1 million to give away when you pass away.
You pass away.
So, so that is, and so you say 70,000 not enough. Okay, well, we got to get that number to 1.5 so you can have, 150,000, 140,000, or 120, whatever the numbers is. But that is what we're talking about. So also thinking about the long term, and it's hard to think about a long term when you're young, but you will get old, inshallah, right? If you don't get old, then something else happened. But you will get old, and just one of the last things I think, one of the things that I just wanted to say to, especially to all the brothers, there's been a lot of conversations around insurance. and especially term life insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Recently there was an imam in Texas who passed away, had 4 kids, got hit by a drunken driver. That men have a responsibility for our family members that, if something happens to us, they're going to be able to get back on their feet. And so, I know there's been a lot of Sharia conversations about this, but we need to understand the times that we live in and what's needed to be relevant and what needed to be healthy in these times. And scholars like Dr. Ma'an al-Quda, like Sheikh Joe Bradford, have said that term life insurance is permissible. And, and it's just like $25, $35. You can get your family enough for them to have 2 or 3 years of resources upon you passing away. And it's something as men that we just really need to kind of have on our list. As it's $40 a month to have on our list to make sure that, they're not dealing with double whammies, right? You remember when that video with the whammy is bad, but the double whammy?
The double whammy,
you might not recover. And so, God forbid, if our families, if our wives are dealing with us, losing us as not only as their spiritual leader, but also their financial provider. Now, especially if they're not working, now they have to go out and do it themselves. We don't want our wives to be just dependent on, the generosity of others, or have to get married. And so that's just a kind of a call to action for our brothers, or not even just our brothers, but our breadwinners, right? Be them brothers or sisters, that just to really think about that. And look, this comes from, I have nothing to do with any insurance company, but this is just, kind of a PSA.
Right.
Yeah, a PSA to our community, because too often we see brothers who, are passing away early, whether it's, they get murdered, they get hit by a car, they get in a car accident, and now they're dealing with that. But then it's also like, this is America. Like, something happened to you, landlord, mortgage company, they like, hey, the first is the first. And so we want to make sure that people kind of understand that. So, those are just 3 bits of advice. And I feel like we didn't even talk a lot about money, but everything we talked about is the precursor to understanding wealth and money.
Right. And I'm glad you said that, because that means that I get to bring you back. Right. Inshallah. You know what I mean? And so, and then we can, at some point, we can kind of have that conversation. And I know you're a busy man, so, be able to get it on your schedule and bring you back to the Get Made podcast. So that way we can dive into that aspect.
This is fun.
Yeah, this was great information, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. So, everyone, Jazakallah khair for your information that you gave us today. May Allah benefit you immensely in this life and the next, for all that you've given to us today, inshallah. So with that, Devin, how can they reach you? I know I should have had something on the ticker, but how can they reach you if somebody want to reach out, maybe ask a question or something nature there?
Yeah, definitely. I got my work email at the bottom of the screen, and you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, Hud Williams. The good thing about being named Hud, there's not a lot of folks that have my name. So Hud Williams on LinkedIn and email as well. So.
All right, that'd be great. So, another great edition of the Get Made podcast. Of course, I thank everyone for tuning in. Of course, y'all can see us at many places on YouTube, at the Hassan Clay Experience. Actually, on all platforms, the Hassan Clay Experience. We broadcast every Monday at 7 p.m. Please hit your notifications. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow me on Facebook at Hassan Clay, as you see it here, and also on TikTok and Instagram at the Hassan Clay Experience. Of course, my book, Taming the Storm: Understanding and Overcoming High Conflict Personalities for a Peaceful Life, is still on sale. Always going to be on sale. I don't even know how to say that. It's always on sale, right? And so definitely check me out at HassanClay.net. And again, next week we could be back. Brother Salim, inshallah, will be back next week. And with that, we want to say thank you. Please continue to share and comment on this. Comment on this information that was given today. Have something, sharing your understanding of what we might have missed the mark on some of this, or what you liked about what was said. Right. And by all means, please continue to support the Get Made podcast. And with that, I'm going to close out, and we're going to see you guys again next Monday at 7 p.m. All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.